I know I speak for all of the faculty and staff when I say we are so proud of you. You have persevered through ups and downs of law school life, from drafting your first case briefs to thriving on journals and in moot court competitions to representing your very first clients. And through it all, you have prevailed. I could not be happier to be celebrating this momentous occasion with you. You deserve to have this day entirely centered on you, on applauding and honoring you and your accomplishments as JD, LLM, and MSL graduates. I also want to acknowledge all of your family, friends, and loved ones, many of whom are here with us today. We know how invaluable your support has been to each one of our graduates, your graduates during their law school journey, and we thank you. Whether you were booking a U-Haul and driving across the country, making a home-cooked meal, or sharing an encouraging word at the end of a hard day, you each have played an important role in our students, your loved ones' achievements. So graduates, please give a big round of applause to the people who helped you get here. Members of the class of 2024, what an exciting moment. You have made it. Today, you become the newest members of the Boston University School of Law alumni community, and we, all of the faculty and staff, are so excited to watch you go out into the world and make your mark. And believe me, you have all of the skills at your disposal to blaze this path, your own path, wherever it may lead you. An ability to read and dissect legal doctrine, a strong eye for detail, the ability to think critically, ask hard questions, affect change, plus so much more. But you also have another tool in your belt, a tool that's not taught in any classroom, at least not explicitly. This tool has not been the basis of any legal precedent, though it has been the driving force behind some of the most consequential cases and opinions in our nation's history. You would be hard-pressed to find a legal text devoted entirely to this tool at a law library. Yet it is one of the most powerful tools in your possession. It is courage. This idea might seem a bit strange to some of you. After all, we often perceive courage as something that shows itself only in times of imminent danger. A lone hero rushing into a burning building, or a soldier battling on the front lines. Not a lawyer filing a brief or making a deal or meticulously constructing a legal rationale. Too many of us have the impression that courage is a gift bestowed on only a few brave souls, or that it is a virtue to be marshaled only in the most threatening of situations. The problem with this impression is that it absolves us of the responsibility to demonstrate courage in the quiet, everyday moments. But each and every one of you has the capacity, and I would even say the obligation, to live courageously, as so many have done before us. Achieving this goal consistently will not be easy. Living courageously is not a single act, but a practice, and it is one that often requires sacrifice and, yes, vulnerability. We live in a time of unprecedented public scrutiny. Every word we utter, every action we take feels vulnerable to attack or misinterpretation. As lawyers trained to mitigate risk, it is natural to want to do or say the prudent thing. Nothing. In fact, far too often, people of good faith retreat to the safety of resignation. The fear of rocking the boat, inviting backlash, or becoming the target of online hate forces many well-intended people, both lawyers and non-lawyers alike, into a defensive crouch. We worry that a false word, twisted or taken out of context, will cost us our jobs. We refrain from sharing opinions or asking questions for fear of losing friends and opportunities. We close ourselves off to viewpoints that are different from our own. And as Professor Brene Brown has explained, we too often prevent ourselves from being vulnerable, from revealing our authentic selves and thoughts. We do it because we fear that such honesty and exposure may deprive us of the human connection we all need. And we do it because it so often feels safer to render ourselves cloistered, mute, even invisible. Believe me when I say I understand. I have struggled with so many of these impulses and fears myself. But living a life of purpose takes courage. No struggle, large or small, has ever been won from the sidelines. No call to action left unspoken has ever been answered. No common ground has ever been found by the silencing of voices. Living courageously need not be the loud, heart-stopping stuff of Hollywood action movies. In fact, the most courageous thing you can do is to live your values every single day, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Inevitably, there will be people on your path who do not share your values or whose values stand in direct opposition to your own. The best of them will hear you out and listen to your perspective with an open mind, as I hope you will do for them. The rest may reject you or try to shut you down. It will take courage to persevere, to insist on showing up as your full selves without resorting to the worst of human impulses. Even those we consider our allies might disappoint us. They might make choices that conflict with the values they profess to hold because upholding them is too inconvenient, too scary. But always remember that courage is not about banishing fear. Courage is about acknowledging your fear, and when the cause is worthy, pushing through that fear. As the writer James Neal Hollingworth once put it, quote, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than one's fear. The timid presume it is lack of fear that allows the brave to act when the timid do not. But to take action when one is not afraid is easy. To refrain when afraid is also easy. To take action regardless of fear is brave," end quote. Now, this vision of courage was put into sharp focus for me earlier this year when I was asked to be a presenter at the induction ceremony for the National Women's Hall of Fame. As its name suggests, the Hall of Fame recognizes and celebrates women who have changed the world through their ideas, activism, and work. One of this year's inductees was my friend and mentor, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw. Professor Crenshaw is a lawyer and pioneer in the fields of critical race theory and Black feminist legal theory. She is perhaps best known for coining the word and creating the framework intersectionality. She also is the founder of #SayHerName, a social movement aimed at raising awareness for Black women victims of police brutality. The reflexive reaction that the term intersectionality alone receives in some corners of society tells you much about Professor Kimberly Crenshaw's ability to walk through discomfort. Her ideas are regularly misinterpreted and deployed as political clickbait, making her the target of brutal online harassment and threats. Nevertheless, she has not shrunk from the urgent task of naming, dismantling, and fighting against systems of oppression. There is something else more important than fear. I also had the opportunity at the Hall of Fame ceremony to speak with another icon, Dr. Peggy McIntosh. Dr. McIntosh is a renowned feminist scholar known initially for documenting the invisible benefits of maleness. Later, she courageously turned the lens on herself, articulating the ways in which she, a white woman, had also benefited from unspoken advantages conferred to her by her race. The resulting work, White Privilege: Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, has been foundational to our understanding of entrenched structures of power. But as Dr. McIntosh shared, the introspection it required of her was deeply uncomfortable. It forced her, as she so powerfully told me, to confront truths she did not want to confront, but she did it anyway. There is something else more important than fear. Throughout their careers, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw and Dr. Peggy McIntosh have shown exemplary courage. During that time, they were grown women capable of comprehending the risk they were levying on themselves and their careers. But when Ruby Bridges, another Hall of Fame inductee, walked through a crowd of screaming parents, angered by the mere thought of racial integration from one 6-year-old's attendance at a racially segregated public school in New Orleans, she was just 6 years old. The late Charles Burks, one of the federal marshals who walked alongside young Bridges through the screaming hordes, once described the 6-year-old's breathtaking courage. He said, quote, "She never cried, she didn't whimper, she just marched along like a little soldier. We were all very proud of her," end quote. Federal Marshal Burks was a pilot during World War II. He was shot down in 1944 and became a prisoner of war in Germany until he was finally able to escape. It is safe to assume that he had a high bar for naming courage. That a 6-year-old girl with little bows in her hair was able to meet this bar is remarkable. And of course, Ruby was joined in her medal by Barbara Henry, a white woman from Boston, who was the only teacher in the entire school willing to teach this innocent child. Most of all, Ruby was joined in her bravery by her parents, who courageously decided to send her to the school as the lone Black child who would integrate a previously all-white school, despite potentially deadly consequences. And there is a direct line between the Bridges family to break down the barriers of Ruby's segregated public school and my ability to walk through our law school's hallowed halls as your dean. There is something else more important than fear. As you embark on this next phase of your journey, I want to ask you to ask yourself what your something is. What values do you hold that are greater than your fear? Who inspires your courage, and from where do you draw your courage? I've told you about a few of my own sheroes, and I encourage you to find your own personal inspirations and let them lift you when you feel yourself falling into that defensive crouch. At the same time, never forget that lone hero of your imagination is none other than you. If you've ever walked to the law school on Bay State Road, you may have seen a sign on one of the row houses on campus. It includes a quote from poet June Jordan, quote, "We are the ones we have been waiting for," end quote. On so many days, I have looked up at that sign on my way to the law school and have found myself dampening my own fears and drawing my courage from that visual reminder, whether the decision or problem I was struggling with was small or large. It is this thought that I ultimately want to leave you with. Do not be lulled into thinking that courage is a domain of others and not yours to claim, or that it is only needed in harrowing times and not in ordinary ones. I urge each of you to leave here with the resolve to live courageously, and to do it not by engaging in death-defying acts of valor, though it would not surprise me to hear that many in this group had already done so. Do it by refusing to let your fears distract you from your higher purpose. Let that purpose be your North Star. Like Ruby Bridges did, march toward it like a little soldier. Well, maybe they're not so little anymore, right, parents? And know that no matter where your path takes you, we are all very proud of you.